I'm Dave from boyinaband.com, and welcome to day 6 of my 7-day song on Psytrance. Yesterday in day 5, I explained about adding effects. Today we'll incorporate arranging those effects, as well as the other elements of the track we've built up, into a sweet structure for a Psytrance song. The first thing to say about the structure of Psytrance is that it's not got a convention. Whereas regular old put your hands in the air trance has strongly defined builds and breakouts, this take on the genre provides a lot more creativity when deciding where to put different parts. It is still about builds, however it isn't about massive anthemic breakouts, so the builds are generally there to build up a constant tension rather than anticipation for that big dance floor shaking riff. When making your decisions about where to put things, try and do your changes every 4 or 8 bars as well, since that'll make it sound less random than other amounts, and if you want 16 or 32 then it might start getting a tad repetitive. I'll show you what I've done for my track now. Ignoring the complex looking beat note lanes for now, I've got the bass line here, going through the vast majority of the track to keep the driving hypnotic feel going, but with the rest of the elements in the track, I've made it build up, stripped it back, by removing a lot of the elements in the track, including the beat actually, then built up again a little more intensely, then breaking out more earnestly by removing the bass as well, and then finally coming back to the biggest build in the track, which has this sweet little filter section here, before kicking back in, then finally slowly stripping away the elements at the end, so the DJ can mix the track into their set. If we look at these riffs, you can see that I tend to tease the listener with a simpler version of the riff before I bring it in completely. I'll zoom in and show you. And this has the awesome side effect of being very hypnotic, since I tend to repeat the part of the riff that doesn't change from the root note much. For instance, in this snazzy acid lead, I just use the first 4 notes to build it a bit, and I've looped them a few times, then progress into the riff that moves to different notes here. So starting on just the looped round, and then eventually it goes round to the riff that goes from that into the higher note, and down, and back up, just to add the variety. And similarly with the pads, if we move back a bit, we can see here that I've just got the first part of the riff, and then later on, after building up, I bring in the second part of the riff here. Things like this are great ways to build up the track, with an element of consistency rather than using a million different lead synths. If that's the sound you're going for, then great, but if you want a Psytrance song that has more recognisable hooks without becoming so repetitive it's boring, try altering the riffs to a simpler version to build to the main riff. Then we've got lead 2, which is simply the same all the way through because I felt I'd provided enough variety with the pad, percussion and other lead to warrant that being a staple part in the background. I brought it in the second and third build sections, so it's more of a definite change from the first section. I like to feel like I'm getting somewhere with my songs, and saw-like lead synths help me de-stress in that respect. The other pads I've got, I start by using the breakout sections to fill it out a bit, like I've got that Janus Monk pad there and the glassy pad, but then, after the second breakout as well, I keep them on. That really makes that third build even more thickly textured. So, that's pretty much the structure. The effects, right down the bottom, are all over the place since they really fill out the track. The reverses go from this lower pitched one here to the higher pitched one later on as the song builds, triggering them every 4 bars. I've also got different levels of bigger reverses that end in different hits, which similarly build in intensity, and these tend to happen every 8 bars, which generally results in them signalling the addition of a new element to the track, which is pretty convenient. And I've kept that eerie ghost vacuum cleaner sound to the breakouts, since it completely swamped the track when there was too much in there in the more upbeat sections. You've got to be really careful to avoid making things too messy and crowded, and that goes for any genre really. Then there's the hits down here, which I've put signalling some of the bigger changes in the song. Then for that filtery section I was talking about, if we solo it out, I'll show you what I mean. Sweet! I simply automated the filter of the Thor instance, which I'll show you now. This one here. By routing it to rotary 1 in the combinator. So you just make sure you've got show programmer, select Thor 1, and then for the target, make it filter frequency on rotary 1. Then I just right click, edit automation, and it comes up with a note lane for it, rotary 1 there. Then it's just a case of using the pen tool, shortcut key W, to draw it in, open it up, and then just draw in some points. That's how you make the envelope. Now the notes I've used there are simply following this lazy little riff I've made out of the Janist monk pad to add a bit of variety to the second breakout, which I felt was a bit lacking. And if we take a listen to that in the mix. See, it's just a very lazy, simple riff over and over again if we take a closer look. And this riff doesn't focus on the root note for a change, instead it just goes up and down. And with the portamento I added to the Janist monk pad when you weren't looking, it combines to make a slow, entrancing synth sound. And so the last thing to discuss is the beat itself. If we go back to song mode and really pan out, we can have a look at it. I ended up taking out everything except for the percussion from the block which we were working in, because I felt the workflow was simpler that way. So I went back to song mode and then drew in the block, which you can do by just simply drawing in like that. And that's through the whole song, which as you can see means I have the whole beat to play with, but instead of searching for all the changes in the beat by looking at irritatingly small dots, I can simply look at where the large blue parts are to see where there are changes, which is much simpler. See, I've added a few smaller fills down here. Take a listen. A little cut there. Little kick fill there. And that's just achieved by drawing in a little bar, opening it up, and just putting in the kicks wherever you need them. Simple as that. Quite like that, actually. So just draw a pattern, and then let loose on your inner rhythmical skills, yo. I've also worked by deciding what shouldn't be in sections rather than what should, which is a slightly different take on things. And while it's resulted in me being an overall more negative person for a day, and I've lost a lot of friends, it is cool to try out different workflows once in a while. For instance, these massive blue blobs with no dots represent where I've cut out sections, like the hats and the snare. See, for instance, no hats here, then you can see the blue block is no longer there at that point, hats there, and then snare. And that allows me to bring in the sections gradually to build the track up each time it kicks in back after a break, for example. There's also a brief rhythmic change just before the final break, if we zoom into that. There, which I felt gave a nice alteration to the groove to break up the track a bit. And there's this snare fill here as well, the last thing I think I'll show you. This one here. And that's simply done by drawing a snare on every beat and then using the draw tool to draw in the velocities for the snare so it rolls up. Just in case you were wondering. And I think that's about it for the arrangement and structure. Join me tomorrow for day 7, where I'll be going over mixing, mastering, and playing the final finished song. Exciting times. Later!